if not, I'm sure that you've at least ridden in one before. Either to go somewhere to school or work, or a certain destination, I'm sure you've been able to use a car. Hi, my name is George Alexander, and I'm here today to tell you, provide you with knowledge about cars, and give you a different perspective on how they've changed society. First, I'll be discussing the early production and the early inventors of cars. Secondly, I'll be able to discuss the history of cars and the impact of the auto industry in the city of Detroit. Lastly, I'll be able to discuss the beauty of the car itself and examples of cars. First, I'd like to talk about the early evolution of the car. The ideas came in the late 1700s, according to the University of Colorado. The first cars that were ever created were powered by steam, electricity, and gas. However, when the mass production of cars began, the producers they believed that steam and electric weren't as efficient as gasoline. Steam engines were very costly to make, and electric engines were unable to travel far distances or be able to reach top speeds. The mass production of cars began in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. The Europeans were first actually to produce cars before Americans. In the European industries, they were known as small and independent, and this is because they weren't able to make a bunch of cars at once, but each of these cars they made were made with precision and handicraft. In the early 1900s, the American production began, and things like the assembly line came to be. A fun fact is, actually, the Model T was not actually the first car. The first car ever made in America was the Oldsmobile. It was a 3-horsepower curved dash car built in 1901. A major city that played a role in the development of the auto industry was Detroit. Here was the place where major advantages and advances in the industry came about, and it was home to the Big Three, known as Ford, General Motors, or Daimler Chrysler. According to the Gilder Lehrman Institute for American History, it claims that Detroit had access to coal, iron, and copper mining, so this enabled Detroit to become one of the biggest places for auto industries. In 1903, the Ford Motor Company sprouted. They introduced the assembly line, and through this assembly line was the future of the industry. In the mid-1920s, the Big Three came about. At this point, Detroit was the hub of the auto industry. Half the population of Detroit was already working in these companies, and the industry expanded. In the 1950s, it was at its peak, and then it suddenly collapsed. The companies were able to find new technologies and were able to do research to produce more efficient ways to produce cars. At this point, people lost their jobs, and the companies were losing jobs because of finding new technologies. And at this time, an influx of African American population came to be in Michigan because they were guaranteed jobs in the auto industry. However, these jobs were actually disappearing. An example that shows the collapse of the auto industry in Detroit is the Packard plant, pictured right here. This building closed in 1958 due to financial problems, and many jobs were lost. In the 1970s, more issues came about. Detroit suffered a lot because of the oil crisis during the Nixon and Carter administrations, and Japan and Germany became competitors in the auto industry. In the 1990s, the Big Three struggled again, even though there was actually an economic boom. The white population of the Detroit area dramatically increased, and now Detroit is known for their abandoned buildings and empty lots. After knowing the history of the car itself, now we need to look into the beauty of the car itself. The science and the creativity put into a car itself makes them unique and remarkable. One of the machineries that I'm going to be talking about in the car is the engine. The engine is what allows the cars to move. According to Weismann, the engine is consistent of 4 stroke combustion cycles, and they are the intake, compression, combustion, and the exhaust. With the quickness of these four cycle parts, the engine is able to create a series of explosions, and therefore creates power for the car to move. There are many technologies in the car itself, but it would take another whole presentation just to explain all of these. An example of a very unique car is unique cars is the Ford Camaro, the Ford Mustang, and the Chevy Camaro. And these two cars were released around the same time. And the reason why is that at the time, around the 1960s, the companies decided that they needed a car to satisfy the young American who had the need for speed. In 1964, the Ford Motor Company released the Ford Mustang. And then, seeing the success of the Ford Mustang, General Motors released the Pontiac Firebird and the Chevy Camaro in the 1960s as well. Even today, as we can see, according to Cars.com, the Camaro and the Mustang are very similar in their features and their specs. Both can come in a V6 or a V8 engine, and base model prices are ranging from $23,000 to $25,000. A deciding factor, if you had to compare these together, would basically be judged by personal taste. Unless you are deciding with performance, if you take into account their performance features, some aspects are different for each car, such as in drag racing or in track racing, each car can do better or worse. As I conclude my speech, I would like to discuss the significance of the car on today's society. According to the University of Colorado, people would not be able to travel far distances without the car. The car itself also encouraged businesses and industries to expand. Due to this expansion, they were able to reach out to other customers and be able to get other resources for their products. And the car has enabled people to leave the city areas and move out into different cities outside of the major cities such as Detroit. One negative that could be discussed through the impact of cars is the contamination of the emissions of the car itself. However, modern tech is able to solve this problem by producing solar powered cars, electric powered cars, and many other hybrids that will reduce the emissions of these cars. Cars has played a major role in our society today. Years of experience and years of expertise and determination from people such as Henry Ford were able to bring these cars to life. Imagine a life without a car. Cars are a major transportation that we use in our daily lives, and it will continue to be for the future. Thank you.